Hey everybody! You know how much I love stories, especially the ones that make you laugh, think, and maybe even shake your head a little. Well, buckle up because today's story has it all. A beautiful park, a group of friends, a whole lot of drama, and a valuable lesson about keeping your cool under pressure. Picture this. Maplewood Park, a sunny summer afternoon. The birds are singing, kids are giggling on the playground, and squirrels are chasing each other up trees. It's the kind of day that makes you want to grab a picnic basket, find a shady spot, and soak up all that good, wholesome fun. But as we all know, sometimes even the most peaceful settings can turn into a scene right out of a reality TV show. And that's exactly what happened when a seemingly ordinary gathering of 6 friends took a turn for the dramatic, turning these ladies into the talk of the town and the internet practically overnight. Now, our story begins with 6 friends, let's call them the Maplewood 6, who decided to meet up at the park for some afternoon chit-chat. These ladies had known each other for what felt like forever. Their bond forged through countless shared experiences, from raising children to navigating the ups and downs of life. They had a tradition of meeting up every few weeks to catch up, share stories, and of course, indulge in a bit of harmless gossip. They'd been friends for years, bonded by their love of gossip, discount coupons, and complaining about pretty much anything and everything. Whether it was the latest neighborhood drama, the best deals at the local supermarket, or the peculiar habits of their spouses, no topic was off limits. Their conversations were a delightful mix of humor, sarcasm, and genuine concern for one another. They were thrilled to finally be together again, especially since their last attempt at a book club meeting ended in a heated debate over the proper way to load a dishwasher. That particular gathering had been memorable for all the wrong reasons, with each lady passionately defending her method as the only correct one. The argument had gotten so intense that they had to abandon the book discussion altogether, vowing never to let such a trivial matter come between them again. The ladies, eager to secure the perfect spot for their afternoon of gossip, set their sights on a particularly inviting picnic table nestled under a giant oak tree. The tree's sprawling branches provided ample shade, making it an ideal location to escape the summer heat. They could already picture themselves sitting there, sipping iced tea and enjoying each other's company without a care in the world. It was perfect, shady, spacious, and close enough to the playground to keep an eye on their grandkids. And by keep an eye on, I mean judge the parenting skills of the other adults. The playground was a hive of activity, with children running around laughing and playing on the swings and slides. The Maplewood 6 loved watching the kids, often reminiscing about their own children's younger days and offering unsolicited advice to the parents nearby. Little did they know, their quest for the perfect shady spot was about to land them in some seriously hot water. As they approached the table, they noticed something that made their hearts sink. A small yet unmistakable sign was placed on the table, and it read, "Reserved." The realization hit them like a ton of bricks. Their perfect spot was already claimed. Because you see, that particular picnic table, it was reserved. The sign was clear, and there was no mistaking its meaning. The ladies exchanged worried glances, unsure of what to do next. They had been so excited about their reunion that they hadn't considered the possibility of the table being taken, and not just by anyone. This wasn't a simple case of someone casually reserving a spot for a small gathering. No, this was something much bigger, something that would complicate their plans significantly. It was reserved for a very important family reunion, a reunion that had been meticulously planned for months, with family members traveling from far and wide to be there. The picnic table was the central hub of their celebration, adorned with decorations, food, and drinks. The Maplewood Six could see the family members setting up, their faces filled with joy and anticipation. A family reunion with a permit and everything. The official permit was prominently displayed, leaving no room for negotiation. The ladies knew they couldn't simply ask the family to move, as it would be unfair and unreasonable. They had to come up with a new plan, and fast. The Maplewood Six huddled together, brainstorming alternative spots and trying to salvage their afternoon. Despite the setback, they were determined to make the most of their time together, proving that true friendship can overcome any obstacle. Enter Ranger Rick, Maplewood Park's resident rule enforcer and keeper of the peace. Picture a man who takes his job a little too seriously, with a perfectly ironed uniform and a whistle that could make a dog jump through hoops. He'd been patrolling the park for over 20 years and knew every blade of grass, every squirrel, and every rule by heart. Ranger Rick was a fixture in Maplewood Park, a man who believed in order and discipline. His uniform was always spotless, his hat perfectly perched on his head, and his whistle ready to blow at the slightest infraction. He had a reputation for being strict but fair, and most park-goers respected his authority. He'd seen it all over the years, from rowdy teenagers to mischievous squirrels, and he handled it all with the same level of seriousness. So, when Ranger Rick spotted the Maplewood Six sprawled out at the reserved picnic table, you better believe he marched right over, ready to lay down the law. The Maplewood Six were a group of women who had been friends for years. They met every Saturday for a picnic in the park, and they had their favorite spot, the big picnic table under the old oak tree. This particular Saturday, the table had been reserved for a birthday party, but the Maplewood Six didn't seem to care. They had set up their picnic as usual, spreading out their blankets and unpacking their baskets. Now, most people would probably apologize, pack up their things, and find a new spot. But not the Maplewood Six. They were a stubborn bunch, and they weren't about to let some park ranger with a superiority complex ruin their afternoon. Oh no, they were not about to let some park ranger with a superiority complex ruin their afternoon. They had been coming to this park for years, and they weren't about to be pushed around. "Excuse me, ladies," Ranger Rick began, his voice dripping with authority. "I'm afraid you're going to have to move. This table is reserved." The ladies, however, were not impressed. They exchanged glances, rolled their eyes, and launched into a symphony of sighs and scoffs. One of the women, a tall brunette named Susan, stood up and faced Ranger Rick. "We've been coming to this park for years," she said, her voice steady and calm. "We always sit at this table. We're not moving." Ranger Rick was taken aback. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by a group of women having a picnic. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I'm sorry, but the table is reserved. You'll have to find another spot." The women sighed and scoffed, but they didn't move. They were determined to stand their ground. Ranger Rick was at a loss. He had never encountered a situation like this before. He was used to people following the rules, not challenging them. He stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. Then he had an idea. He pulled out his whistle and blew it, hoping to get the attention of the park-goers. But instead of dispersing, the Maplewood Six just laughed. They were not intimidated by Ranger Rick or his whistle. Realizing that his usual tactics weren't going to work, Ranger Rick decided to try a different approach. He took a deep breath and addressed the women again, this time with a softer tone. "Ladies, I understand that you have a tradition and I respect that, but this table is reserved for a special occasion today. Perhaps we can find a compromise?" The women looked at each other, considering his words. After a moment, Susan spoke up. "All right, Ranger Rick, we'll move, but only if you help us find another spot that's just as nice." Ranger Rick smiled, relieved. "Deal," he said. He spent the next few minutes helping the women find a new spot for their picnic, and by the end of it, they were all laughing and chatting like old friends. As he walked away, Ranger Rick couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. He had managed to keep the peace without resorting to his usual strict methods. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to being a park ranger than just enforcing the rules. And so, Ranger Rick learned an important lesson that day. Sometimes, a little kindness and understanding can go a long way. And the Maplewood Six? They gained a newfound respect for the park ranger who had once seemed so rigid and unapproachable. In the end, everyone left the park that day with a smile on their face, and Ranger Rick knew that he had done his job well. After all, being a park ranger wasn't just about enforcing the rules. It was about making sure everyone could enjoy the park in harmony. And that perhaps was the greatest rescue of all. Ranger Rick, taken aback by their audacity, tried to reason with them. He had dealt with difficult visitors before, but this was something else entirely. He explained that the family reunion had a permit, that it wasn't personal, that rules were rules. He pointed to the sign that clearly stated the area was reserved, hoping to appeal to their sense of fairness. But the Maplewood Six were not having it. They were a tight-knit group, known for their morning yoga sessions and book club meetings, and they felt entitled to their usual spot. They argued that they were there first, that the reservation sign was too small to see, it wasn't, and that he was being completely unreasonable. Their voices grew louder, attracting the attention of other park-goers. The scene was quickly escalating from a minor misunderstanding to a full-blown showdown. The Maplewood Six were not backing down, and neither was Ranger Rick. Voices were raised, accusations were thrown, and poor Ranger Rick, caught in the middle of it all, started to sweat through his perfectly ironed uniform. He could feel the eyes of the park visitors on him, waiting to see how he would handle the situation. He realized he was out of his depth. This wasn't just a simple case of littering or feeding the ducks. This was a confrontation that could easily spiral out of control. This wasn't just a simple case of littering or feeding the ducks. This was a full-blown Karen conundrum. The Maplewood Six were relentless, and their demands were growing more unreasonable by the minute. This was a full-blown Karen conundrum. They wanted the family reunion moved, compensation for their inconvenience, and an apology from Ranger Rick himself. With a heavy sigh, Ranger Rick reached for his radio and called for backup. He knew he needed help to handle this escalating situation. "We might have a situation here," he muttered under his breath, hoping that a little police presence would be enough to defuse the situation. He described the scene to the dispatcher, emphasizing the urgency of the matter. Little did he know, things were about to get a whole lot more interesting. As he waited for backup, he noticed the family reunion party watching the commotion with growing concern. The children clung to their parents, sensing the tension in the air. The family reunion attendees were starting to feel the pressure too. They had planned this event for months, and now it was being overshadowed by the escalating argument. The parents tried to distract their children with games and snacks, but the tension was palpable. Ranger Rick knew he had to act quickly. He couldn't let this situation ruin the day for everyone else in the park. He took a deep breath and approached the Maplewood Six once more, trying to find a compromise. "Ladies, I understand your frustration," he began, trying to keep his voice steady. "But we need to find a solution that works for everyone. How about we find you another spot in the park? I'll personally make sure it's just as nice as this one." The Maplewood Six exchanged glances, considering his offer. They were still upset, but they could see that Ranger Rick was trying to be reasonable. After a moment of silence, one of the women spoke up. "All right, we'll move," she said reluctantly, "but we expect that new spot to be perfect." Ranger Rick nodded, relieved that they were willing to compromise. He led them to a shaded area near the lake, pointing out the beautiful view and the nearby amenities. The women seemed satisfied, and the tension began to dissipate. As the Maplewood Six set up their picnic in the new spot, Ranger Rick watched from a distance, feeling a sense of accomplishment. The family reunion continued without further interruption, and the park returned to its usual peaceful atmosphere. Ranger Rick took a moment to enjoy the scenery, grateful that the situation had been resolved without further incident. He knew that being a park ranger wasn't always easy, but moments like these made it all worthwhile. With a smile on his face, he continued his rounds, ready to face whatever challenges the day might bring. After all, in the world of park management, you never know what might happen next. And so, the day went on, with Ranger Rick keeping a watchful eye on the park, ensuring that everyone could enjoy their time in nature. The situation had escalated, but thanks to his quick thinking and calm demeanor, it had been peacefully resolved. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, Ranger Rick reflected on the day's events. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he was ready to face them head-on with the same dedication and determination that had seen him through today. With a final glance at the peaceful park, he walked towards the sunset, ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. The situation had escalated, but Ranger Rick had proven that with patience and perseverance, even the most challenging problems could be solved.